Movie buff specialist Phil and John are back, and we are continuing going through these Marvel movies in order. And wow, I only have so many years left of my life, and every time I watch a movie like this, they get reduced. And we also are talking about The Exorcist Believer, and I am a believer in that. That is a dead franchise, and that is a bad movie. And oh my god, I actually watched The Exorcist 3 this week.
I saw that.
And man, that movie is so good. It is so good. It is so close to being a 4-star movie. If they didn't force the exorcism at the end of the movie, it's a 4-star movie. It is just flat out phenomenal. But Exorcist Believer, man, that was a bad movie. And Avengers Age of Ultron, wow, that had a lot of CGI.
Yes, it did. I will say this about The Exorcist Believer. It was a good movie until it was a bad movie.
That's what I said to my wife, and she's like, really? And I was like, yes.
Like, it was actually like, I was about halfway through that movie, and I was like, man, this movie's actually kind of good.
Yeah.
And then the back half happened, and I was like, never mind, it's a steaming pile.
Yeah, and so I Am Connor says there's an Exorcist 2 and 3 ? Yes, the second one is terrible. That is called Heretic, and that is a bad movie. Linda Blair, not worth watching, not scary, just total nonsense. But the third one is called Legion, and it's actually based off William Peter Blatty novel, which William Peter Blatty obviously wrote the first one too, and it's based off his novel Legion, which is more of like a detective story based around a murder that it happens years after this exorcism, and how it kind of feels like it's connected in some way. And in the novel, there's no exorcism, at least from what I understand. I believe there's no exorcism, but the studio wouldn't let him just call it Legion. They demanded he call it The Exorcist 3 and that they put an exorcism in it. The exorcism is the worst part of the movie, but my God, does George C. Scott give a phenomenal performance in that movie. I will say this movie came out in 1990. It heavily inspired The Silence of the Lambs. Heavily. There are so many breakings of the fourth wall in this movie where they just stare straight at you. It is really, really well done. It is so matter of fact. It's a hard hitting. It's very edgy. It almost has a 70s feel to it. Brad Dourif, who does not get enough roles, is phenomenal. Jason Miller reprises his role as Father Karras, sort of. Just a great movie, and two of the scariest moments I've ever seen in movie history.
Yeah, it has like one of the best jump scares in all of horror movies.
Of all time.
I haven't actually personally seen it, but I know that jump scare. I know it because everyone in the world who likes movies knows about that jump scare. And isn't the fact that it has the Exorcist title kind of the reason why people don't like the movie? Because it's not really an Exorcist movie.
Yes. If they would have just called it Legion, it is so well made. Like, it is such a well made movie. The direction, William Peter Blatty's, I think, the only movie he directed. At least it was the first. Yeah. Wrote and directed it. He has such an eye. He knew what he wanted to do. There are some beautiful scenes. Like, it is very, very well made. But yeah, because it's called The Exorcist, it's not that scary. It just has a couple scary moments. It gets creepier as it goes on. But it's not really a horror movie first. It really is in the vein of Seven and The Silence of the Lambs, where it's a horror movie, but that's not really what it is. So Valir says, fun fact, Jeffrey Dahmer watched the third one a lot. Well, I have now seen it quite a few times, so I hope I don't follow in his footsteps. Yeah. Clutch hat trick. John, this is the best way we could ask to start off this podcast. Went to that Exorcist movie, and I don't know, man. John, tell me about Exorcist the Believer, because this is what we're talking about for the next, hopefully only 6 minutes, but, maybe half hour.
It's definitely more than 6 minutes because there is a lot to dissect in this movie, because it starts with this prologue in Haiti. And I got really concerned immediately as soon as this movie started in Haiti, because I was like, ooh, are they really going to be that racially insensitive in this movie? Are they going to possess this child all the way back now as their prenatal? That's where I thought it was going. I'm so thankful it didn't go there. It kind of sets up in a way for you to really, really hate Leslie Odom Jr.'s character at the beginning of the movie. And it pays off. That is one of the biggest payoffs in the entire movie, I think. is like what they do with Leslie Odom Jr.'s character here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll say it right now. Leslie Odom Jr. is by far the best part of this movie.
Absolutely. And I will say this, John, the twist, and maybe I won't mention it. Maybe we turn this podcast into a little less spoilery, a little bit less. We don't have to get too much less. But I don't really want to spoil the twist because that's the best part of this movie.
I agree. I agree. It is one of those things where it actually kind of ruins the movie if you know it.
I agree.
That being said, this movie's kind of ruined anyways because it's a Blumhouse movie, and Jason Blum hates people. He hates everyone because Jason Blum has this philosophy on his trailers that he has to always show the best parts of the movie, and he believes audiences will forget about it. Yeah. He believes audiences have such a short memory that they will forget what they say in a trailer. Jason Blum clearly hasn't been on the internet because trailers are combed over like finely. You know every detail. You have people questioning about some prop in the background of every like single shot in a trailer. And Jason Blum ruins movies with his trailers. And you can't avoid his trailers because Blumhouse movies are so popular that they show their trailers before everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, this trailer was everywhere, man. And that's what Clutch Hattrick said. He says he's watching Big Brother and it's on all the time. I mean, this trailer, it's still playing. My wife was watching The Amazing Race after Survivor, and it's on. I mean, it is nonstop how much they showed the trailer for this. And that's because, I mean, look, say what you want about Jason Blum. He has made a boatload of money making some pretty good horror movies. There's some good ones in there for sure.
Absolutely.
But I do agree with you. I mean, there's no scary moment in this movie because all of the faces and everything like that, you see it in the trailer. I'm not joking when I said I was dozing during the exorcism scene of this movie. I was legitimately falling asleep in I don't fall asleep in movie theaters. I think it's so inconsiderate. I talked about the snore during Oppenheimer. I could not keep my eyes open. If you're watching a horror movie, I could start the Blair Witch Project at midnight and I wouldn't be able to fall asleep till the movie was over because it keeps you on edge the entire time. Same thing with The Shining. Shining's 2.5 hours long. If I started that in an hour, I would not be able to fall asleep. Yeah. This movie doesn't do that because, and a lot of that is from the advertising. You know what's coming. And it's kind of a shame because the story isn't bad. I actually quite liked what they did at the beginning because if you remember the original Exorcist, they do have the dogs in the yellow light, whatever, the sepia tone and all of that. And it kind of had that feel and you felt that impending doom of something that is kind of irrelevant to what's going to happen later in the movie. Or how is it going to be relevant? That's the better way of putting it. How is it going to be relevant to what's happening later in the movie? They built the story. I like that it was the Haiti earthquake. I like that he is left with the decision of his child or his wife. And again, I won't get into the details of all that because it actually is the best handled part of the movie. And the story actually worked well. These two girls who go into the woods and something bad is happening and yada, yada, yada. It keeps going on. And I was like, I actually like this movie. But it kind of falls into the same issue that The Exorcist, the beginning, and Dominion, you know, they're the same freaking movie, no matter what they want to say. But what they fell into, which is once they give up on the story to try to get into the supernatural elements, these movies just fall apart. They just absolutely fall apart because they miss the point of what made the original Exorcist work. They miss the point of what makes a movie like The Exorcist 3 work. They miss the point of what makes The Conjuring work. Like, they just don't seem to understand what it is that actually makes those work. And it's that constant building of suspense. And it's not just, oh, look at the makeup that's on her face. That doesn't work anymore. It worked when it was Linda Blair in 1973 because nobody had ever seen anything like that before. But now I look at that makeup and I say, man, they did a crappy job of trying to make that girl look like Linda Blair in 1973. Like, it doesn't work. There needs to be something different. There needs to be something that hits me on an emotional level or in a different way that freaks me out. And looking at makeup on girls' faces with upside down crosses doesn't do it for me.
There's a question of whether or not The Exorcist works in today's day and age like it did 50 years ago.
It doesn't. It absolutely does.
It's a totally different world. The world's not as religious as it was back then. It's not as, I mean, lack of a better word, it's not as prude as it was back then, right? Like, these shocking scenes from The Exorcist, just like the language Reagan uses in The
Oh yeah.
Exorcist and stuff, which is directly quoted in this movie, which I enjoyed that quite a lot. But still, like the head turning around, the masturbation with the crucifix, right? Like those are all things that were so much more shocking 50 years ago, and they seem so tame nowadays.
I was laughing when Catherine was cursing in this movie. I was literally laughing because it was so blatant that they were trying to do what was happening with Linda Blair in the original Exorcist, and it was falling flat. And I think a lot of that is because you're just trying to copy exactly what was well done about that movie. And I don't think The Exorcist, I think if the original Exorcist came out in 2023 and we'd never seen a horror movie like that, I don't think it would be as well received or anything like that. It is so good though. And I am Connor, you go watch that. It is well worth your time. But I do agree with you. However, The Exorcist is such an incredibly well-made movie that if you show that movie to somebody for the first time now, they sit there and they go, wow, this is an amazing movie, because it is so different. It understood, and William Friedkin was brilliant for this, which, by the way, William Friedkin died earlier this year, which I didn't even know. Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But so William Friedkin died earlier this year, but it showed the brilliance of William Friedkin, because William Friedkin sat there and said, it was almost like he understood horror was going to change as time went on. It's like he could look back in time and see the original Universal monster movies and say, wow, like Dracula's not scary anymore. Frankenstein's not scary anymore. They're great movies. They're in my top 50 horror movies, but it's not because they scare me. It's because I think they're really well made. But William Friedkin understood why those movies stood the test of time. In 1973, Dracula and Frankenstein were already 40 years old. And it's almost like he got that of, I can go ahead and make a movie that will scare people now, but I have to think in 50 years, what's going to scare people? And what's going to scare people isn't pea soup shooting out of a girl's mouth. It's not the cursing or anything like that. The disturbing elements, the constant building of suspense, and the storytelling are what make it so brilliant. Ellen Bernstein and Jason Miller in that first movie, the story that goes on with the two of them, by the time, and this is, okay, John, I know I'm on one here, but you got to just let me go.
It's okay. It's okay.
This is the Animal House. The Nazis didn't do Pearl Harbor. He's just let him go. He's having one. But in the movie The Exorcist, we see Chris McNeil do everything she can for her daughter. Everything she can do for her daughter. She is trying her best to save her daughter from this health scare. And that's what it is. It's a health scare. What is happening physically and mentally to her daughter? And finally, she hits the point where she says, there is nothing else it can be. And she goes to a priest and she says, I think she needs an exorcism. And Jason Miller's reaction in that moment is to laugh at her. He laughs at her. Okay. And also, we're almost an hour. I think we're an hour into the movie at the point where she says she needs an exorcism. And it is so unbelievable that this woman would ask for this, that the priest laughs in her face. And it is this woman with the glasses on. It's one of the greatest shots in film history, with the glasses on and the black eye underneath it, wearing the little headband thing. It is brilliant. Now, in The Exorcist Believer and in every other horror movie that comes out that wants to be spiritual horror, they're like, we need an exorcism. It's time. It is time for the exorcism. Everybody come on in. It is so ridiculous how quickly they jump to the exorcism logic. And I understand that this movie is called The Exorcist Believer. And I understand that they're like, these movies are all, that's what they're building towards. But what made The Exorcist work was it was so unreal that this would even be considered. And now The Exorcist Believer, which, by the way, the parents of Catherine are so terribly handled, and we're going to talk about that.
Oh, my God.
But because they're religious, they're immediately like demonic possession. My in-laws are incredibly religious. That is never where their minds would go because somebody was acting weird after they were lost in the woods for a long time. The quickness of that jump in logic is so absurd, and it's so unrealistic. And it's so glossed over. And that's what makes it by the end when they're doing their exorcism. I'm sitting there. When that priest walked in and they played the hero music for him, I almost left the theater. I
That's
almost
fair.
actually got up and walked out of the theater because it was so pathetic. Because who the hell is that priest and why do I care?
Yeah, that is a lot of what I had. I came out of this movie, and after you had seen it, I texted you and I said, David Gordon Green didn't understand The Exorcist.
Mhm.
And like, it's so clear when you watch this movie that he has no understanding of what The Exorcist was about, because The Exorcist is about this like battle between science and faith, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's this battle between the two philosophies coming head to head, and it's about characters coming to terms with the fact that yes, there is this, like, the implications of a demonic possession are huge. Huge.
Mhm.
It is literal proof of like pretty much everything Christianity stands for.
Yeah.
Right? So like, it's huge in a movie like this, and especially when you have a character who started as a psychiatrist and then moved on to the clergy and everything, right? Like, that tension there is what drives the heart of The Exorcist. It's people not believing in the spiritual coming to terms with that. And again, that's part of the reason why Leslie Odom Jr. is the only character in this entire movie that works.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
it
I
has that
totally
conflict.
agree. Because he has that conflict. And I think about, we talked about, if you want to listen to a podcast where we praise The Exorcist, I mean, I had it in my top 100, and go find that episode over in our countdown. Just the line of Father Karras saying, I think I'm losing my faith.
Yeah.
After that moment, the entire movie is a downward spiral. It is just a downward spiral because the demon has found his way in. It's the weakness. When the priest loses faith, how is there supposed to be hope for Christianity? How is there supposed to be hope for religion, right? And there's no bigger issue in this movie. I agree with you. Leslie Odom Jr.'s
There's some
character
bigger issues in this movie.
What'd you say?
I said there are some bigger issues in this movie.
Well, I mean bigger issues like in a
in
grand
the universe of the
like
movie,
theme and stuff like that, not problems. No, but you're right. Leslie Odom Jr.'s character is very good because his is the only one who's sitting there saying everybody else keeps coming to him with the religious propaganda, and he's saying, why? No, I'm not doing that. This is stupid. They're coming in, they're doing their, depossessionizing his room or whatever the heck they're doing, which I thought was weird that somebody just walked into his house and said, no, I'm doing this because I care about you. I mean, that's like,
I literally forgot who that character was at that moment. I was like, who is this random white guy in this guy's house?
And then we're doing, oh, you have to bring everyone together at the end of the movie. And I was like, what are we talking about?
It made no sense.
What the hell is happening? It was so lazy. It was so bad. And like, I was very into the movie. And then Ellen Bernstein showed up. And I love Ellen Bernstein. The Last Picture Show, The Exorcist, Requiem for a Dream. She's a phenomenal actress. She showed up and it was like the writer said, great, we got her. Who the hell cares what we do after this? We got the draw. We're going to get the grandmas and the grandpas who were kids when they saw the original Exorcist. And now they're all going to come and watch this movie because we got Ellen Bernstein. Everything that happens from the moment she steps on screen until the end of the movie makes absolutely no sense. It makes zero sense. There is no logic to 99% of it. She loses her eyesight, and then there's like not like I didn't want to spoil the one part of the movie, and I'm still not going to. But this other stuff I don't feel like is a spoiler because it doesn't make any sense. No. She loses her eyesight. Linda Blair shows up so they could say Linda Blair's in a movie for the first time in like 25 years, which, by the way, I was in the same room as Linda Blair, and I was kind of starstruck just because I love The Exorcist so much. But it's just nonsense. And I have serious problems with the end of this movie, but I'm going to let you talk before I just keep doing what I'm doing.
It's like they decided that, like, okay, let's just get to the David Gordon Green of it all. David Gordon and the Danny McBride of it all, right? These are the two people who are mostly in charge of this movie. David Gordon Green wrote it. Danny McBride is the producer of it. They did the latest Halloween trilogy too, right? They just don't have respect for legacy characters.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, we're living in a time where we have these requels going on, right? Where it's like they're kind of rebooting the series. Because keep in mind, everyone, there are 2 more Exorcist movies slated for 2025 and 2026. 2 more that are like sequels to this somehow. I don't know how. It's never established how this is actually connected to The Exorcist other than the fact that these legacy characters are here. There's no connection to it's not Pazuzu, as far as we know.
Uh-huh.
There's no connection there. Don't even ask me how one demon possesses two children. I don't know how that works.
Well, and then the demon chooses which child he wants at the end.
Yeah. Who knows? But it's like there's this trend right now where you introduce these legacy characters and you have to do something exciting with them. So you have to either you could take I'm going to spoil a bunch of recent horror movies right now. You could take the Texas Chainsaw Massacre where you just kill them. You could take the Scream where you slowly kill them one by one. You could take the Halloween approach where they're hard and old and you kill everyone around them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make a third movie that's completely not relevant to anything else that's happened so far.
Yeah.
But having this character in here doesn't make this a better movie. In fact, it makes it a worse movie because it's detracting from the character who you've actually built, who's really interesting. And you have Ann Dowd in this movie, and you gave her the worst lines to read ever. And she tried so hard, but the writing is so bad.
Man, the Ann Dowd character was a dud, man. And I love Ann Dowd. The Leftovers, I was talking about Chris Eccleston back when we had to talk about that Thor thing. But I love Ann Dowd. Her character is such a waste. So boring.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I guess my frustration is I want originality in my horror movies. And when I saw the trailer for this Exorcist movie, I said, man, that actually could be pretty good. It seems like they're going back to their roots. And they were back at their roots until they decided that they wanted to bring Ellen Bernstein in and do everything like that. And that was frustrating. Yeah. And they knew they were going to make money. We talked about it. It's $30 million budget, made $26 million opening weekend. This is a movie that's going to make money for people. It's not an expensive movie. So they can turn around and make money.
Yeah.
But there's nothing original about this movie. And I get horror is a tough genre to do original without making it nonsense. A lot of times when horror tries to be original, it gets too heady and it's not actually saying anything, blah, blah, blah. But the 20 teens were, and I would say from 2005 till 2016, 17, whenever The Conjuring came out, that was a great 12, 13 years for original horror content. And when I just look at my top 50 for horror movies, and I always talk about these movies, but I can't stop. The Descent, It Follows, The House of the Devil, The Orphanage, and then you have The Conjuring, you have The Witch, you have The Babadook, you have Hereditary. Hereditary came out in 2018. Let Me In, Let the Right One In. And I get Let Me In as a remake of Let the Right One In, but still, there were so many great original horror ideas, even Sinister, until that last shot that we talked about ruins part of that movie. But there's so much originality. And I feel like everything I sit down and watch now is so unoriginal. And it doesn't have to be that way. It was not, It is a very good movie. I hated the second It, but I thought the first It was a very good movie. And it didn't have to be super original, but it had to find different ways to build the suspense and scare me. And it did a good job with that while keeping the story at the forefront. The Exorcist Believer didn't know what it wanted to do in the third act. And I think what bothers me is when you put out a movie that is attached to arguably the greatest horror movie of all time, if not one of the greatest movies flat out of all time, when you make a movie that is now going to be associated with that forever, throw out Heretic because that was a quick scheme to make as much money as they could. So whatever. But
it was the 80s. You made more money at that point.
Exactly.
That's what you did with horror franchises.
Yeah, that's what you did. It was Friday 13th. It was Jason. It was blah, blah, blah. Right down the line. I guess I should have said or Freddy. Sorry.
Yeah, because those are the same movie. But
exactly. My bad. But the point is you've attached this now and you were okay making a bad movie. And I think that's what bothers me the most. When I watched the first half of that movie, I said, man, this just got a bad rap. And then I watched the second half of the movie and I said, these people were okay making a bad movie. They deserve to be panned. They do. They deserve to be panned. If people want to say that you made a terrible movie and these people can't make a movie again, good. Because why are you so okay making this bad? I don't understand that. Have some pride in the work you're making.
Yeah. Well, to save a Gordon Green, we already know he doesn't because of his Halloween movies, but still.
I never even watched them. I don't like the first Halloween, so why would I watch any?
Yeah, that's fair. But apparently, Leslie Odom Jr. walked off the set of this movie during production.
I don't blame him.
Like, they knew this was going to be a bad movie. It's so unfortunate because, like, I really do think, like, the first half of this movie is so strong. It's so well done. And I make it so the demon's, like, hopping between these two girls or something. That's something we haven't seen. That makes it more interesting. That's all you needed to do.
I still don't understand why they were possessed because they went and did whatever they did. Like, it made no sense. It made no sense. They tried to put reasoning behind it, but there was no reasoning. And what makes the first Exorcist brilliant is there is no reason.
So I rewatched The Exorcist this week in preparation. And it's interesting because there's a real, like, short kind of throwaway scene in The Exorcist where the Ouija board scene, right? Where it's kind of like, if you're someone who's not paying attention to this movie and realizing that, like, Pazuzu taking control of Reagan is a totally random event, you think it's, oh, Reagan's invited this demon into them by using this Ouija board. That's clearly what David Gordon Green thought.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did. And we don't get random people being possessed in this movie. We have two girls who meddled with the line between life and death in a homeless camp where guys are, like, insinuating that they're, like, raping children and stuff. It was quite disturbing. It's just, like, it's not The Exorcist when you do that, right? Like, it's one of these other billion exorcism movies we got in the early aughts. Right? Like, this is I don't know, all of those ones. The Last Exorcism, the second last Exorcism. Yeah, like, literally, say The Exorcism of, there's probably a movie about it.
Yeah.
And, like, that it's so different from The Exorcist because The Exorcist had so much heart behind it. It had so much thought into what it produced that when we get to the last half hour of this movie, which is The Exorcism, boy, hell, I was rooting for the demon at the end of this movie.
So, okay, we have to talk about this scene now without spoiling the one good moment of it.
Yeah.
I am going to spoil something else. So if you don't want to hear this, tune out until about 31 minutes. Okay? Seriously, because 31 minutes is my cutoff, John. Okay, that's it. We're going to 31 minutes, and then we're talking about Age of Ultron because I might not live. So there's your warning. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. The fact that they kill Catherine and they make it seem as if it's because her dad said he wanted to save her.
It's so bad.
The most ridiculous thing. Wow, her dad is a bad guy because he's religious and beeps his horn at the family who parks their car directly in front of him in the school parking lot, which is totally inconsiderate. But he's a bad person because he's religious and he cares more about his daughter than anybody else's daughter. And when his daughter goes missing, he is acting like it's the other girl's fault, which, I mean, obviously is something parents would do, but this guy is specifically bad. And then at the end of the movie, he is not punished, or no, he is punished because he says he chooses his daughter and wants his daughter to live. But that selfishness of not wanting his daughter to die and have her soul stolen by the devil is the reason why his daughter dies and has her soul stolen by the devil. So really wanting your kids to not die and not become possessed by demons makes you a shitty parent and you deserve to fail. And we're supposed to just be like, well, thank God it was Leslie Odom Jr.'s daughter who survived. Catherine sucked and her parents deserved it. Like, I hate to be like this, but, like, screw you. Whoever wrote that, like, that's shameful. It's pathetic that you have that job. It's so pathetic. I don't understand, and this is what makes me so mad about Hollywood. There are so many talented writers out there. Go find one.
I just don't understand how. Now, I watched this movie without finding out that there were two sequels incoming. If I had known there were two sequels coming, and, like, I already wanted this to be the ending. If I knew there were sequels, I would have expected this to be the ending. How did we not get the devil played a trick on you? Both girls are possessed and they kill everyone in the room.
Dude, because
what a better ending that would have been.
Yeah, it had to have the fake positive ending.
Yeah. It was,
which how is this a positive ending? We literally watch a little girl die. But this is the positive ending because it's the little girl we don't care as much about.
Yeah. Well,
what is going on?
I got to the point in this movie where we get to the conclusion, and I'm like, in The Exorcist, Karras takes Pazuzu into himself and jumps out a window. And it's the only way to get rid of the demon. It takes self-sacrifice.
Yep.
What the heck was the ending of this movie?
Yeah, there's no self-sacrifice. It's just, oh, you care about your daughter and you want her to live, so I choose you. And then we have that random scene of her in the water looking around, going, where am I? And then the demon says, I choose you, and takes her under the water, which means nothing because none of that has been set up in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah.
It got lazy. It got so lazy. Because and like you said, like, I didn't like the fact that obviously I knew about the missing girls and everything, and that they'd obviously been found and they'd been possessed and everything because of the trailer that tells you everything about this movie. I'm actually pretty positive. There's a big point in the third act of this movie where the priest won't come into the exorcism because the church said he wasn't allowed to.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the trailer has the priest in the exorcism room.
Oh, he comes in eventually.
He does. I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's supposed to be a big moment.
We know.
Also revealed in the trailer.
Yeah.
Right? And also he gets our head spin around moment, and it's not even all the way around. It's more of a nod to, like,
his neck breaks.
Yeah, it's more that, like, he fell down a flight of stairs and his dad.
Oh, well, we're at the
way around, right?
Yeah, we're at the 31 minute. We're at the 31 minute mark. So now we have to not spoil because I promised.
Okay. But
you got one more thing left to say about this movie, and then I got one more thing left to say. So
it's just so disappointing that when a movie's so strong, it builds up this great relationship between a father and a daughter, and how he's already experienced loss. So when she goes missing, he is, like, in massive distress. It has these, like, slight racial tensions between this overtly religious white family and this, like, single black father. And Catherine in church, hilarious, so good. Like, funny, not scary, obviously.
Oh yeah, it's one of the worst scenes I've ever seen. That's what my next talking point is going to be. That
so
scene
funny.
Pathetic.
And, like, the movie is just going so well, and then they decide, hey, you better talk to the fact that it's like, hey, you have to go talk to Chris McNeil instead of, hey, we should probably go talk to the church about an exorcism. It's just like the deep end.
They bring Chris McNeil into the movie just to have her do literally nothing. She just walks into the room and she's like, I know who you are. You know who I am. And then she loses her eyesight. Like, what?
She gets her eyes stabbed by a crucifix, which I guess is in reference to, like, the crucifix scene in the original. But, like, it's not the same. It's not the same, and it doesn't come across the same. And now I'm just wondering why you brought this character in the first place.
Yeah. You know what it means, John? It means it's time to move on to Age of Ultron.
Okay.
I'm just going to be honest, guys. Don't watch it. It's not worth it. If you haven't watched it, it's not worth it. It's really not. And there's other movies you can watch during your October. It's a bummer. It really is. I was excited. Not that I was, like, over. I didn't have that much high, like, potential, but, like, a 3-star movie is all I wanted, and it wasn't that.
Yeah.
So let's move on to. What'd you say?
I said it was until it wasn't. Like, that's the only way I can describe this movie. Is it was good until it wasn't.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to Avengers: Age of Ultron. Okay. I'm going to put up Jordan's
comment. I'll just give you the next 10 minutes here.
I really like Jordan. Age of Ultron is actually a movie I really like. Okay. Everybody can have their opinion. I'm not gonna sit here and, like, insult him. I'm not gonna do that. No. I'm not gonna do that. Okay. I'm gonna make it official first. Hold on. Let me Age of Ultron. I'm typing that into Letterboxd. I'm now clicking it. It dropped it in as the last movie on my list, and I'm not going to move it. This is the worst Marvel movie I have seen up to this point. Although I don't remember Black Panther much, and I remember giving that 1 star as well when it came out. But that was kind of overshadowed by Bohemian Rhapsody, which just makes me laugh because I just think of the Aidan Gillen scene every time of, so this is Queen. One of the worst scenes ever made. Age of Ultron is everything I hate about Joss Whedon for 2 hours and 21 minutes. Like,
it's so long. This movie is so unnecessarily long.
I could not, like, my windows, we just got storm windows put into my house because we live in Florida, so, hurricane-proof windows. If like I would have smashed my head into it if I thought I would have broke the window, but the window would have really just broke my skull. But like I wanted to just keep smashing my head against this window over and over again until the window broke. But I know that I would actually end up dropping dead at some point before this window would break. Every one-liner. And why does every single thing that any of these characters do have to be followed by a one-liner? Like, why can't they just have certain moments where they don't have a witty comment that is so cringeworthy? Why? I don't like Ultron as a villain. I think it's very lazy. I think the idea behind Ultron is good, but I think they lose the plot way too early. And I think that's because Joss Whedon's never actually written a plot. But I could not stand this movie. And I have been a huge Captain America defender this entire time. My favorite part of this whole series. They made Chris Evans unlikable in this movie. That's how much I didn't like this movie. The whole, like, I think what bothered me the most about this, and I get that, you know, comic books really were kind of for like nerds, right? And I say that respect. It was kind of for nerds. It was for the people who don't do that. I mean, I play Final Fantasy X and my wife walks in the room and just, what the hell are you playing? Because it's weird. You know, it's one of those things where you're just like, yeah, I like this. You don't have to like it, but I do. But these movies aren't supposed to just be for nerds. Like, these movies are supposed to be for everyone. These are the blockbuster of the blockbusters. These are the highest grossing movies of all time across the board. And it felt like this movie was written to make 11-year-olds go, That's all it was. It felt like that's what the whole point of this movie is, for 11-year-olds to walk around and say, language, got him, and like be the funny kid in 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade, whatever the hell an 11-year-old is. I was so frustrated the entire movie. I thought the plot was nonsense. I did not like the banter. The love stories. I don't hate the idea of trying to make them happen. I hate the idea of how Joss Whedon elected to make them happen.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. This was a bad experience for me. I was very, very bored the entire time. I was not into it at all. This was one of those where it was just nonsensical explosions and things and blah, blah, blah throughout the entire movie. I couldn't wait for it to end. I don't know. It's not for me. And maybe this is like the one that comic book fans really, really love, but this just is not for me at all.
It's not. The only other time I've ever watched this movie was when it was released in theaters. I saw it by myself. I think it was a Monday afternoon. I remember coming out of it being like, I didn't really like that. That was when I liked Marvel movies a lot. Mm-hmm. This movie, disjointed. It is so all over the place. It is literally just an action scene, a little bit of exposition, another action scene, a little bit of exposition, another action scene, some exposition about something you didn't even know was relevant, another action scene, and then like a 50-minute action scene to end the entire movie. It didn't do anything new. It didn't introduce anything. I think there's one scene in this entire movie that's compelling. It is when Ultron first reveals himself during the party. That James Spader's soliloquy is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. James Spader does not act like that for the rest of the movie. The character is completely different after that for some reason. I don't know why. He was so intimidating. He was so terrifying.
And you would think he would get more and more that way because he's getting more intelligent.
Yeah. You would think he'd become more imposing. He becomes more Joss Whedon as the movie goes on. He starts like making quips and trying to be funny. And it's like, this isn't this character. This character is supposed to be this imposing villain that they also wrote very poorly, because they wrote it so that he could jump throughout the internet, which made it so they had to write this like weird, simple plot at the end of the movie to make it so they couldn't jump all over the internet anymore.
Yeah.
Just don't give him the power to jump through the internet.
Yeah,
you don't have that problem in the first place.
Yeah, it was too big of an idea for this movie. It didn't have an intelligent solution to what could have been a really intelligent villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so unfortunate because like James Spader, like his soliloquy is so strong and so menacing. It feels like he is so powerful, beyond whatever the Avengers can handle, despite the fact that we just saw them fight off an alien invasion. A Norse god was leading. Like, power scaling, guys. Like, you have to... It's like when you... I'm trying to think of like an example, but like it's like in Dragon Ball Z, right? You go from Frieza, who is... Or you go from like Vegeta, who's like this goonie, for Frieza, who gets like more powerful, and you keep scaling it up, right? When you go down to a lesser scaled villain, it feels worse. Because now you're like, okay, but they should be able to handle this pretty easily. It's just, I don't know how this movie is written so poorly. I mean, I do, because I don't.
We just lost all our viewers, John. Way to go.
I'm sorry.
But
it's also late now.
Jason Obermeyer said, I know this is about Marvel, but any of you two DC EU fans, which do you
They're
prefer?
worse than Marvel movies.
I haven't seen any of them, to be completely honest, though. So, like, I couldn't comment on that at all because I haven't seen a single one. And I can't even pretend. And then he says, it probably has so much going on and some stuff is never answered. Just random things happen. And that is really what this movie feels like. I do agree. Like, at the end of this movie, when Thanos shows up and he puts the Infinity Stone glove on or whatever it is, you feel like there's something happening there, but then you keep asking yourself, why has Thanos not been the villain of this movie yet? Ultron is a random villain. And I think what bothered me the most about this movie is it acts like the Avengers just hang out together all the time. At the beginning of this movie, all the Avengers are already on a mission to do something, and we have no hint that any of this was going to happen based on the movies that came prior. We don't know about this at all. And so it just starts there, and they're already in it, and it felt like a video game. Okay, that's fine, but it's not a video game. This is a 2.5-hour movie, and you're making me watch. This is the 11th movie in a series. So the first 10 should have something to do with this, and I don't feel like they do. I feel like Joss Whedon just said, I'm going to write these characters however I want. I'm going to make the plot whatever I want, and it's just going to happen. And like, there were no hints prior to this movie of Banner and Black Widow having a relationship in any way. Hawkeye's backstory, I get what they're trying to do with that, so I will give the benefit of the doubt there. They're trying to give a little bit more humanity to a character that is, you know, overshadowed and everything like that, to show that there are just regular humans who are a part of this. But also, I could give a damn if Hawkeye died in the first movie. Like, I don't care about Hawkeye at all. And so it didn't do anything for me. When you're watching the twins do their thing, Elizabeth Olsen, who I think is a very talented actress, her accent comes and goes in this movie quite a bit. Aaron Taylor Johnson's character really doesn't do anything. It felt like this was the 2000 video game version where the cutscenes could only be like 25 seconds long because they didn't have the technology yet, but it was going to look really cool, but they weren't going to be able to tell the whole story. So then, like, after the cutscene, you'd get that initial part where your guy's running down the hallway and you hear the voiceover of gotta find the locker, gotta find the gun, like whatever he's looking for. That's what this kind of felt like. And it could have been better, but then what happens is, because it is taking itself so not seriously early on, by the time we get to these more emotional, gigantic air quotes, bigger than the planet, air quotes, moments, you don't care as much. And I just didn't care as much. And I get that I'm not a fan of the MCU. Okay, I get that I'm sitting here and we've gotten through 11 of these movies. And when you look at my list, I have 2 3.5-star movies, and they're both Captain America movies. And then I have 2 3-star movies. And then everything else after that is 2.5 or less. Like, I understand that. But at the same point, I don't want to hate these movies. I'm not going into this saying, I hope this is a 2.5 hours of my life that I regret. I'm not one of those people who sits there. When I was in college, we used to, watch a really bad movie and drink while we watched it and just laugh at it and pregame for a party that way. And every now and then you'd find a gem like The Room or Thanksgiving or something like that. And we're getting close to Thanksgiving time. So Thanksgiving is definitely on.
No, just passed. What are you talking about? It was the other day.
Well, yeah. Okay, John. Sorry, you don't have the right calendar. God. But I watch this movie and I sit there and I try to watch this with an open mind and I try to enjoy it. And I try to think, okay, can I turn my brain off? I don't think I'm that pretentious, but can I not be pretentious? I get I have like a pretentious taste, but I think I explain why I like things in a pretty basic way. I can't do it. This, to me,
No.
it was just a nonsensical 2 hours and 21 minutes that really frustrated me. And I couldn't wait for it to end. And none of the characters did anything for me. None of the relationships did anything for me. Again, the one-liners were so bad. I could not stand any of the one-liners, and they don't stop coming. And that's really it. That's what I have to say about Age of Ultron. Like, there's nothing that this movie could have done with the story they were telling that would have made me enjoy it. But it could have been easily a 2-star movie had they cut out every single one of those one-liners.
I think there is something you could do to make this a good movie, just like with the structure you have. But what it requires you to do is to make this a standalone movie, which is what we've been complaining about with the recent Marvel movies, is that they rely too much on what has happened before them. This movie starts you with an invasion of a Hydra hideout that they've apparently found somehow, with the implication this is the last existing Hydra hideout.
There's
no
no
implication.
Any movie before this.
No. Well, I mean, the hint to that is the fact that they find out Hydra exists again in The Winter Soldier. But after that, like, the implication here is the Avengers have all of a sudden grouped up together again and are doing all of this, despite the fact, well, I mean, like, I guess we saw Guardians of the Galaxy in between, so who knows how much time's really passed since Winter Soldier. But apparently it's enough for everyone to come back. Thor is back on Earth for some reason. He's kind of the hardest character to ever include in these because you really have to find out why he's here.
And the laziness of the why aren't the ladies here?
Oh my God. Let's talk about cameos in this movie because there are so many of them. If you are a named character in the MCU at this point, you're in this movie unless you're Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
He's the only character not mentioned in this entire movie.
Yeah, there's a lot mentioned, even though there's not a lot that are actually in it.
There's a lot in it, too. Don Cheadle's in this movie. Anthony Mackie's in this movie. Stellan Skarsgård's in this movie. Colby Smulders. Samuel Jackson shows up in the movie. Like, there's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, there are. And at the end, they just throw in as many as they can, right? To be like, this is the new Iron Man, or this is the new Avengers initiative.
Yeah. It's just so... It feels like a middle movie. And, like, there are so many good middle movies out there. Obviously, we have things like Empire, The Last Jedi, I mean, even The Two Towers, right? Like, good.
Why did you say The Last Jedi? Like, why did you have to do that? You know that doesn't count, John. That only counts for you.
It still counts.
It only counts for you.
The point being is that, like, there are so many good middle movies out there. Back to the Future 2. I don't even like those movies. I put that one in there for you.
Thank you.
But this is a middle movie that just has no idea the direction it's going. And we talked about the Thanos post-credit scene. Why is that the post-credit scene for this movie?
Yeah.
It makes no sense because Ultron wasn't a servant of Thanos.
Yep.
You know where this makes sense as a post-credit movie? At the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, where we saw a goonie of Thanos trying to get an Infinity Stone.
Yeah, exactly. Because that whole movie is based around Thanos and Gamora, and there's characters that matter. And this one, it keeps feeling like these last scenes. I know a lot of people get really excited about these last scenes, but it really feels like with these last scenes in some of these movies, it's just they're thrown in there just to be thrown in there. And this was one of those
in there to show you what's coming next.
But it's never actually coming next. It's always 2 or 3 movies away.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, yes.
And what's the next movie? We're doing Ant-Man. Does that have anything to do with Thanos?
Nope. Unless you count the theory later that came around with Thanos. But we'll talk about that when we get to Endgame. Yeah, the Ant-Man theory. But I don't know. It's just like there's also a point at the end of the movie where Thor's talking. Okay. I specifically asked. I gave you homework. Remember, Phil? I told you last podcast. What scene in this movie did the studio insist was in this movie?
Okay, so because of that, it's got to be something with Thor because you just said it. Is it the one where he mentions Natalie Portman?
No, it's the cave scene.
What's the cave scene?
Where Thor has his cave vision about the Infinity Stones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was the studio insisted that was in here. And at the end of the movie, Thor specifically says, it's strange that 4 Infinity Stones have popped up all at the same within recent times. How do they know about the Power Stone being with, or the Space Stone being with? No, wait, Power Stone? I don't know. Whatever stone is with from Guardians of the Galaxy. How does anyone in this movie know that was found?
Yeah. I don't know.
It makes no sense.
I don't know.
It makes no sense. There's just discontinuity throughout this entire movie. I mean, we haven't even like harped on some of the worst parts about it yet. Like you said, the Scarlet or the I'm confusing it because there's a character named Scarlet and there's an actress named Scarlet.
It's Elizabeth Olsen and Scarlett Johansson. Those are their names.
The Natasha Bruce relationship comes out of absolutely nowhere. We see nothing against this. And what this movie tries to do is it tries to give so much to the characters who don't have their own movies that it takes away from this being a group movie.
Yeah, that's true. It feels like it's trying to build them up more than it actually needs to.
Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, what's the relevance of Hawkeye's secret family?
To get Linda Cardellini in the movie. Linda Cardellini's great. We all love her.
Never complain about Linda Cardellini being in something, but and like it's just we get it. Hawkeye is like this normal guy in the Avengers. We got that when he was the one without superpowers or a super suit.
That is true too. Also, right? Like, okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but the line about him saying that he's shooting arrows at robots, none of it makes sense, is not meta. That just shows how poor this movie is.
Yes.
It's not meta. That is telling everybody that your movie is nonsense.
I also don't understand how you give this emotional moment with Hawkeye having a family. We understand he's a family man. And then he doesn't die in this movie?
Yeah, I still haven't figured out kind of why Hawkeye doesn't die in all the movies.
But there's literally a point where he should be the character that dies. Instead, they give us the character who has had no character development that we don't care about dying.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even remember who died.
Quicksilver, the twin.
Oh, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. Yeah, that really hit home. I'll tell you what, I was upset.
Yeah, right? And it's just...
What year did this come out?
2014, 2015?
Oh, good. So he died so he could be in Nocturnal Animals. So maybe I'm not bad.
Okay, that's fine. But the point being is like, there's no risks taken in this movie. There's never a point. Also, there's this character. I don't know if you noticed this character named Helen Cho.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Comes out of there, seems kind of important, is kind of just a plot device.
Yep.
Doesn't actually get a character other than is scientist.
Yeah, she's a geneticist.
Yeah. Who makes artificial bodies.
She's only in this one?
Yes. She is a comic character. She is a comic character who gives birth, like she is the mother of Amadeus Cho, who becomes the Hulk later on. One of the Hulks later on. Like she is a relevant Marvel character, but she's just in this movie.
Interesting. I will say, speaking of those types of things, though, because you're talking about scientist who does thing, blah, blah, blah. I actually do like the Jarvis thing, which I guess now is Friday. Is that what the human version of Jarvis is? What's the human version? I'm looking up the wrong thing. What's the human version of Jarvis?
Vision. Paul Bettany's character?
Yeah.
Yeah. Vision.
Yes. I like that. I actually thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was like a nice little addition. I thought that was, I guess Friday is what Jarvis's replacement is, right? That's something. Friday is something, right?
Carrie Condon. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Friday is Carrie Condon.
Oscar winner Carrie Condon, no matter what anybody says. Yeah, I actually like that. That was one of the few things about this movie that I was actually into and I thought was interesting, was the fact that Ultron was scared of Jarvis, who Jarvis then became like human form. So what Tony Stark created was able to,
do what he was supposed to do, right? Like he was
supposed to be
a defender. Yeah,
exactly. But Ultron just to me was just such a flat villain that I just didn't care.
Yeah, Ultron needed to be more of a symbol of Tony's fear.
Yeah.
There needed to be more reason for Tony's fear. we get the fear from like the vision Tony has of everyone being dead, but it's not enough to really drive this type of creation from Tony, right?
Yeah.
Because we as viewers believe Tony is a smart enough man to not get thrown off by a vision.
Yeah.
Or if he was to be thrown off by a vision, maybe it has something to do with that PTSD he had in the last movie we saw him in.
Yeah, exactly. Nope.
It's just the lack of continuity is so frustrating. There was another scene that really bugged me. There's that whole. Let's talk about the Hulkbuster scene, which is the big Iron Man suit that is used to fight the Hulk.
Yeah.
Why on earth is the plan when fighting the Hulk to fight him in the middle of a populated city?
Because they need to destroy the city so it looks cool.
Yeah.
It
makes Tony Stark look really dumb.
Yeah, no duh. All of that stuff always makes people look dumb. That's why everybody always makes that comment about, oh, when you watch the Avenger pick up your car and throw it at somebody else and you just stand like there's no regard for anything else. And I get that's the comic book kind of thing, right? But isn't the comic book point to be like, we're going to save humanity? I don't feel like they're actually trying to save humanity in this movie. I feel like they're just trying to do what's best for the Avengers in this movie.
Yeah, it's really, and it feels strange with us leading up into this like big Infinity part, like the Infinity Stone part, right? Like we saw an intergalactic threat in the last Marvel movie, and we have such a and in contrast, we saw a very human threat in the movie that preceded that. And now we have this movie that's just like the hubris of Tony Stark. Hasn't that literally been the plot of every Iron Man movie so far?
So far. But isn't this also like, no, he's a good person, so he's going to do everything he can to save everyone.
Is he?
But that's what I think that's one of the lines they say, isn't it?
Maybe.
I don't know if that
didn't Tony also like
lines.
Didn't Tony also like swear off being a superhero at the end of Iron Man 3?
I don't know. Does it matter? Now he's not. Now he's back. So
back.
You must have missed that part, John.
Oh, I must have. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's just like I agree with you. There's just too much nonsense. It just feels like it was a bunch of random things thrown together just to be random.
And then they introduced like these. There are so many characters introduced in this movie. There's Von Strucker, who's introduced at the very beginning, who is technically was introduced in the post-credit scene of Winter Soldier. Right? And then like, oh, he's this big bad guy. Nah, he gets killed off screen, in case you were wondering. You have Andy Serkis's character, who does eventually come back. And I'm sure you're going to be very fun when we get to talk about him again.
Yeah, I can't wait.
And then, like, again, if we're talking about, like, things that make no sense, Eric Selvig isn't crazy and naked in this movie.
Yep. He's very much back to just being normal.
Yeah, like, it's just, like, nothing from the previous movie stuck in this. And it's just like this, like, stepping stone to get us to this next phase without you knowing what's happening in the next phase. And it really feels like, from the fact that Joss Whedon does not direct or have anything to do with the MCU after this, that Disney was just like, yikes, this was a bad idea.
Yeah. No, and I mean, good. I'm glad he goes away because I couldn't handle more Joss Whedon. I really couldn't. I couldn't, John. I'd break.
I know.
I'd be done. I think about like the missed opportunities with this movie, but then I wonder, are there actually missed opportunities with this movie, or was this just doomed from the start? And I feel like it was just doomed from the start. I feel like it's a placeholder that didn't know where it wanted to go. It didn't know what it was trying to build off. It didn't know where, like, it didn't know what the point of itself was. I think that's the biggest problem. I feel like they just wanted to make another Avengers movie.
It's a stepping stone movie. This movie does have a lot of ramifications for what's to come next. It leads into the next Captain America movie, the next Thor movie. Technically, I guess you could say it leads into Ant-Man. Definitely the next two Avenger movies. Like, it's getting there.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's kind of just like this vehicle to introduce a lot of characters all at the same time.
Mhm.
And like,
Yeah. And now Wanda's a Avenger because she walked through that door.
yes, they don't even explain Wanda's powers. And to be
Not at all.
fair, Scarlet Witch has like the weirdest power set ever because it's changed so many times throughout her history. Also, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver at the time of this were still mutants in the Marvel comics.
Mhm.
I think it was just as this movie came out that they finally revealed that they weren't mutants. They believed they were Magneto's children for a while. There's a whole lot of like comic history to these characters. And Scarlet Witch is just like such an important character in Marvel history, and she's treated so poorly here.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like as somebody who has no experience with these characters at all, I didn't know what I was getting into with Scarlet Witch and with Quicksilver. And I feel like, okay, Quicksilver runs around fast. That's cool.
Yep.
I had no idea what Scarlet Witch was doing. I really
Scarlet
didn't.
Witch's
It just seemed like every time
powers
she
were
banged their arms, they died.
originally Scarlet Witch's powers were the powers of probability.
It's easy to explain in a movie.
Yeah, totally easy to explain. It has now been changed to magic.
Yeah, it's just easier.
Yeah. But I don't know. This movie is just like a stepping stone. It does, like I said, it does set things up for future movies. It gets characters in the right places for things that are about to come. It gets some ideas out there for what's next to come.
Mhm.
But in the end, like it doesn't follow through with anything. I don't know how big this like chunk of Sokovia was that they shot up into the earth. I don't know how high
And
it
then it
actually has
didn't
to go
hurt
to be a
anybody on its way
catastrophic
down.
event to kill everyone on the planet.
Yeah, didn't hurt anyone.
I don't know. I would really like to know that. I would like if someone has done the math on this, please send it to me. I really want to know.
You know somebody has too, except they've explained it in a positive way for the MCU because, yeah, I agree
Probably.
with you. It made no sense.
Yeah.
It made no sense.
I don't know. There's some cool characters that were introduced to this. Hopefully, as we explore them more, they become more cool. And I mean, like, let's look at it this way: no more Joss Whedon. No.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for that. And I'm done because it's midnight. It's tomorrow. I need to go to bed today.
I know.
But no, I feel like we had good discussions about both these movies, and I didn't need to have good discussions about either of these movies.
I know.
I'm a little bit more hopeful for next week. Ant-Man and Saw 10. So we're gonna do Saw 10. We're not gonna go watch Taylor Swift the Eras Tour because if I want to watch a concert, I'll go watch the concert in real life. So we're gonna do Saw 10. It is still playing by me, so I can make sure I can get there. And I have higher expectations for that, honestly, than I did for Exorcist the Believer, just because the reviews have been so good. And I'm optimistic about Ant-Man. I always hear that Ant-Man's not that, it's always like considered pretty good and surprising and whatever. So
it would have been better if the original director stayed on it.
Yeah, but we're only well, who was the original director?
Edgar Wright.
Yeah, he would have ruined his career.
Edgar Wright leaving Ant-Man is the reason we have Baby Driver.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not upset he left Ant-Man then. I hate to tell you.
But supposedly Edgar Wright's Ant-Man script was the best Marvel script that has ever been written, and they didn't use it.
Cool, John. Cool. That's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know.
All right, I'm going to be a sarcastic ass, but is it really that hard to like? That's like, wow, this was the best Exorcist remake that isn't the Exorcist 3, or the best Exorcist sequel that's not the Exorcist 3. Like, okay.
Well, let's just say Baby Driver was heavily inspired by his Ant-Man script.
Cool. Hey, that's cool. I mean, I'm excited to watch it. And by excited, I mean it can't be worse than what I just watched. So
it's definitely not. I would be surprised if you thought it was worse than this.
Yeah, I think this might be the bottom of the barrel for me until we start getting into the newer ones. So
it's kind of the bottom of the barrel for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, Ant-Man's next. And Saw 10. So if you've been dying to hear us talk about Saw 10, we're going to be doing it next week. Probably next Wednesday again. I'm going to make sure I actually get in to watch the movies. I'm going to be in Tampa because the Lions are playing the Bucks. So I'm going to that game. So I'll do my best. But that's it. that's what we got. I hope you enjoyed this episode. John and I are here to stay. I know a lot of you who are over here after listening to the Survivor content are probably confused about what's going on with this channel and stuff. I'm gonna be honest with you, not much is changing. Alexa's going to be gone over there from the Survivor thing at the end of the season, but everything else is going to stay the same. I'm not going anywhere. I like doing this. So we're going to keep going through the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And if you don't know what we're talking about, thanks for listening. We will see you next week. Make sure you go out and watch those movies. And if you liked Age of Ultron, explain to me why. Like, seriously, explain to me why. I'm asking with an open mind why you like this movie. I'm not trying to be an ass. I am genuinely curious. I know Jordan Alford liked it. I know other people did. I'm genuinely curious what it is about this movie that maybe I'm just missing because I don't like comic book movies. So,
and the best place to have that discussion is in the Movie Buff Specialist channel in the Patreon Discord.
In the Discord. Yeah, come over to the Discord. It's $1 to go to the Discord. That's it. It's $1. I don't even know why we have that tier. But anyway, we'll see you next week.